Good evening, you're watching World News Tonight on TVP World. I'm Aaron Darman. As we go to air tonight, Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk is addressing the nation less than 24 hours after the right-wing Karol Nawrocki won the country's presidential election in a dramatic runoff.
Jest tak mała, tak minimalna.
Poland's coalition government is scrambling after losing a razor-tight presidential election race with its candidate Rafał Trzaskowski, who led slightly in the first exit poll, losing in the final count to right-wing historian Karol Nawrocki. So what happens next? And could the country face a snap election? Kazimierz Słyszak reports.
After a nail-biting finish to the presidential election in Poland, it was the centrist Warsaw mayor from the ruling coalition, Rafał Trzaskowski, who first announced his victory.
I will be the president of all Polish women and men. I will be your president.
But this celebration was premature. The late polls tipped the scale in favor of conservative historian Karol Nawrocki, backed by the Law and Justice opposition party. And the final results are clear. He will be the next president of Poland.
I ocalimy Polskę.
We will win and save Poland. We will not allow Donald Tusk's grasp on power to complete and the monopoly of the evil government, which does not care about public money, to complete.
This result has been widely received as a failure of the ruling coalition led by Prime Minister Donald Tusk and a win for the Conservatives and the far right.
So it's a kind of yellow card for this government. They will be able to do lots of different things, but they will have some balanced counterweight type of power in terms of presidential office.
According to opinion polls, many of Nawrocki's voters simply chose a candidate who wasn't from the ruling camp. That gave him the slim edge he needed to clinch victory, as confidence in the government is fading.
The government proposed a very ambitious program of reforms ahead of 2023 elections. And first of all, it failed to deliver a lot of the electoral promises. And second of all, even those promises that were kept were not properly communicated to the people.
Now that the ruling coalition has failed to put its own man in the presidential seat, questions are rising over its ability to rule efficiently. It's already been difficult enough with the incumbent president Andrzej Duda. A Law and Justice ally, Duda's vetoed several crucial bills since the government changed in 2023. Karol Nawrocki is expected to go along the same line.
This is not necessary to show that this law is illegal or unconstitutional. Simply the president may say, I do not think this is a law which is necessary for the good of the country or for the good of my political orientation.
And the ruling coalition is not wasting any time, with the spectre of snap parliamentary elections before the 2027 vote looming over it. Prime Minister Donald Tusk had previously announced the government's reshuffle to take place after the election.
I'll sit down for talks with my coalition partners, not to take something away from them, but to decrease the size of this government and to make it more efficient.
The government will be more consolidated and more determined to deliver, even though, of course, to go through legislative process might be more difficult because one could expect a veto from the incoming president.
The Prime Minister is also going to deliver an address to the nation in the evening, when he is expected to announce a vote of confidence in Parliament to consolidate support. Karol Nawrocki is likely going to be sworn in as the new president of Poland in August, but his victory is already causing ripples in the Polish political scene. For TVP World, I'm Kazimierz Łysiak.
Zwyciężymy!
Now we can confirm in the last few moments that we've heard Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk address the nation and announce that vote of confidence in the coalition government. Let's bring in our TVP World Europe editor Marcin Zaborowski to discuss these developments. So Marcin, tell me what happens next from here?
Well, we know that the Prime Minister will be submitting this vote of confidence. And in the run-up to the actual votes happening, he will need to make sure that all the coalition partners are on board. And we already heard from some of them, for example, the votes from the Third Way. There are three coalition parties which form the government. One of them is called the Third Way. And some people, some leaders of that option, they criticize the move. They don't like to have a confidence vote. They didn't like not to be consulted. So it will take some time for the Prime Minister to bring this option on board fully. If he does, then the government will have a renewed mandate and will be standing tall in facing that probably very difficult cohabitation with the new president, Karol Nawrocki.
Let's talk about that mandate. Why is Prime Minister Tusk making this announcement now, just hours after Karol Nawrocki was announced as the winner of the presidential election?
Well, obviously, the last year and a half since this current government was elected, there was an expectation that there would be this difficult cohabitation going on with current President Duda, and they will survive this cohabitation, but later on they will introduce a strong legislative agenda with reforms, because they would have their own president. And this is not going to happen. We now know that the difficult cohabitation with President Duda will be extended to probably even more difficult cohabitation with more radical loyalist of the Law and Justice Party, Mr. Karol Nawrocki. So that means that the whole strategy has to change. That means that now the government has to reassert its mandate, has to say we are united, we stand together, and we will continue to submit the legislative proposal to the new president. And Tusk has already promised that they will be doing that.
TVP World Europe editor Marcin Zaborowski, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And Karol Nawrocki, he was plucked from political obscurity to run on a right-wing ticket for the opposition Law and Justice Party. Now, partners across Europe and the world want to know what the next president of Poland will stand for when his term begins in August. I look into the future of Nawrocki's palace. This is Poland's next president, a right-wing historian with a Hollywood smile. Mr. Nawrocki, do you believe you can still win the election?
Yes, still, I will.
Handpicked from the political wilderness by the opposition Law and Justice Party, his campaign imitated Donald Trump's rallying against the old world order, and it is this platform of national sovereignty and a deep scepticism of the European Union that will likely underpin Nawrocki's term in the presidential palace.
It's really the guy who is a sort of accidental politician in many ways. I don't think even Law and Justice knows what he's gonna do, and he is very far right, very anti-Ukrainian.
At the heart of this election has been a paralysing cohabitation between outgoing President Andrzej Duda, a Law and Justice ally, and Prime Minister Donald Tusk. The President is the Commander-in-Chief of the Polish Armed Forces, represents the country on the world stage through state visits, and must give the green light to new ambassadors or military generals. They also have a veto power, which Duda has used to stall the coalition government's proposed reforms, a pattern that is set to continue under Nawrocki.
We will save Poland. We won't allow Donald Tusk's power to be all-encompassing, the monopoly of power, the evil power.
That means domestically, issues like the liberalisation of abortion access and women's rights, which Tusk and presidential challenger Rafał Trzaskowski have advocated for, are set to be put on the back burner by the socially conservative Nawrocki.
I am a Catholic, I am a Christian, so my general position is of course in favour of life. In the case of rape, Polish law regulates this. The decision obviously belongs to the woman.
Away from home, he's built his strongest ties with Washington, briefly meeting with President Trump in May and getting the White House administration's endorsement ahead of the final runoff. But from Berlin to Brussels, it's believed Nawrocki will rail against foreign influence and what he calls EU overreach, possibly reigniting the confrontational tone used by the previous Law and Justice administration.
So what's your message to European allies?
I'm coming. This is my message. I'm coming.
And on Ukraine, Nawrocki's tone has hardened, ruling out the war-torn country's accession to NATO, which ends a rare cross-party consensus on the issue, saying Poland will only continue delivering support after putting its own interests first.
Jak prezydent Zełenski nas
If President Zelensky treats us badly, we have the right to say it. And millions of Poles in Poland today would like to say it, but cannot say it, because immediately there is the slogan that we are speaking Putin's propaganda.
Nawrocki has never previously had an electoral mandate, but his words paint a picture of a man determined to double down on a nationalist fight for Polish identity. Aaron Darman, TVP World. And for more reaction to Nawrocki's victory, our EU correspondent Angela Skujins was on the ground in Brussels and sent us this report.
Celebratory remarks have rolled in for the Law and Justice-backed presidential candidate Karol Nawrocki hours after he clinched victory at that high-stakes presidential runoff election on Sunday. Now, that presidential candidate campaigned on a Eurosceptic conservative policy platform, hence why we've seen some of the warmest words come out of the hard right camps across the European continent. This includes Budapest, with the Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban writing on social media that he congratulates Nawrocki, as well as his Foreign Minister Peter Siartu. Now, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky also celebrated Nawrocki while he was attending a security and defence conference in Lithuania. Many see this as a strategic manoeuvre, as Nawrocki has previously stated he would block Ukraine's accession bid to the 32-member-strong military alliance. Let's take a listen to what Zelensky had to say.
Poland is our big friend and strong neighbor, and we respect the voting and of course voting of Polish people.
The heads of the European Union also weighed in. We heard from European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, European Council President Antonio Costa and European Parliament President Roberta Metsola. Across the various iterations of their congratulations, we heard an underscoring of them emphasising the need for Poland to continue working with the EU as that Central European country is a key security and defence pillar for the 27-member-strong bloc. But we will only know more about the flavour of Nawrocki's presidency after he gives his maiden speech following that August inauguration. Only then will we know whether he wants to be in line with those EU policies and follow the administration of the pro-EU, pro-liberal agenda of the Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk, or whether he wants to further encamp himself with those right-wing European politicians. Angela Skujins from Brussels for TVP World.
It was difficult. Now it will be very difficult. That's the message from Poland's Minister of State Assets in response to Nawrocki's rise to the presidency. It comes amid questions over the future of the country's economic standing and whether Poland will be able to maintain its curve of growth. Piotr Mischuk reports from the European Financial Congress in the seaside city of Sopot.
Post-election economic challenges are atop the agenda of this year's conference, as many experts are worried over whether Poland will be able to keep up its current GDP growth, which is the highest in the whole of Europe. According to the Polish Minister of State Assets, Jakub Jaworowski, this election of Karol Nawrocki bodes ill for the economy.
Niewątpliwie zmieniły się okoliczności.
Undoubtedly, circumstances have changed, and they've changed for the worse. We can expect the period of heightened uncertainty to continue. Unfortunately, all this is happening at a time when Poland's situation internationally isn't very safe. It was difficult, now it will be very difficult.
What might be the biggest challenge for the current government is that President-elect Karol Nawrocki is strongly against raising any taxes. This is according to former Prime Minister Jan Krzysztof Bielecki.
Theoretically, the president could support some good solutions suiting the country, maybe with the one or two exceptions, because if he said that, for example, I will never sign off any increase of taxation in Poland. Okay, that is a big problem for the finance ministry, because sometimes you should increase some taxes in order to stabilize the economy.
The election of Karol Nawrocki raised many eyebrows on the market, as he might block some key reforms of the current government. But what the future holds for Poland and the Polish economy, we'll see in the coming months. For TVP World from Sopot, I'm Piotr Miszczuk.
Elsewhere, Ukraine and Russia have agreed to another large-scale prisoner swap after their second round of direct talks in Istanbul. But the warring sides still seem far apart over any possible peace deal. Our correspondent Alex Kadia is in Istanbul and joins us now. Good evening, Alex. What have we heard from both sides?
Well, good evening, Aaron. Anyone who was hoping that these peace talks could presumably lead to a peace deal will be bitterly disappointed, but it's safe to say that the expectations were at rock bottom before this meeting ever started. There was quibbling over whether or not the Russians had sent their position as they had promised they would do. They didn't. The Russians then complained that although the Ukrainians had sent their position to them, they hadn't sent it in the Russian language. A constructive attitude clearly walking into these talks. Nevertheless, as you said, that prisoner swap agreed, possibly the largest since the start of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. All all prisoners, I should say, under the age of 25 will be swapped. So too will those severely ill. We heard from Rustem Umerov, the defense minister of Ukraine, about this very deal after these talks ended. Let's have a listen to what he said.
We agreed to focus on specific categories rather than numbers. We agreed to exchange all for all, seriously wounded and seriously sick prisoners of war. Second category is young soldiers who are from 18 to 25 years old, all for all.
Well, yeah, is the breakdown by Rustem Umerov, the defense minister of Ukraine. We also heard from Vladimir Medinsky, the head of the Russian delegation, the presidential advisor to Vladimir Putin, about another slightly darker part of this deal. Let's have a listen to what he said.
We have solved a few practical issues. First, we will unilaterally hand over 6,000 frozen bodies of the Ukrainian officers and men killed in action to the Ukrainian side.
So clearly there, that's stark sign of the consequences of this war. 6,000 bodies being exchanged on both sides. The Russians suggesting a 2 or 3 day ceasefire in strategic locations to allow that to happen. But again, the deep distrust between both sides, particularly from the Ukrainian side, as they have seen Russia not budge at all in its negotiating position. Still asking for Ukraine to demilitarize, still asking for Ukraine to withdraw its troops from Ukrainian sovereign soil, making it impossible for the Ukrainian delegations to engage. And then if you look at a proposal from Ukraine, the return of all kidnapped children to their country, the Russians simply say there are no kidnapped children. They have just been saved by our soldiers. So clearly, that prisoner swap, a positive. Young men will be able to go home, but still absolutely no sign of peace here in Istanbul. Aaron.
Thank you, Alex Kadia, our correspondent in Istanbul. And we return now to the Polish presidential election, because for the first time in a decade, Poland will not just have a new president, but also a change in First Lady. So who is Marta Nawrocka? Anastasia Yanchenko explains.
After 10 years, it's not just the president who's changing in Poland. His wife is also moving into the presidential palace. And with the start of the presidential term, she will officially become the First Lady of Poland. This is Marta Nawrocka, wife of President-elect Karol Nawrocki. She has always remained in the background, but recently her presence on the political scene has become more visible. According to Nawrocka, she will fight against hate and aggression and will be closer to people and the nation.
As a woman, as a wife, but above all, as a mother, I don't approve of hate, hatred, or aggression. I just wanted to tell you that I chase gangsters. I don't marry them.
She was referring to a recent boom of media reports about her husband's alleged ties to criminal gangsters, including hooligan fights, the seizure of an elderly man's apartment, and many more scandals. However, both are denying all the allegations. Born in Gdańsk, she studied public administration and began her career in the public service. Before her active involvement in her husband's political life, she worked at the National Revenue Administration, where she specialized in monitoring the oil and spirits industries and combating illegal gambling. She met Karol Nawrocki 20 years ago, and they have been married for 15. Together, they are raising 3 children, one being her son from a previous relationship, whom Nawrocki adopted after their marriage.
She got pregnant when she was 17, and she got married with Karol Nawrocki when she was 19. So she's a person who has gone through a lot.
In Poland, the role of the First Lady has no formal legal or political obligations. It's primarily ceremonial and representative, according to political experts. It's up to the First Lady to decide whether to be an active political participant or a quiet accompaniment to her husband.
Jolanta Kwaśniewska, so a wife of former president Aleksander Kwaśniewski, that she actually understood her role in a much more progressive way. Agata Kornhauser-Duda, who was pretty much a silent first lady, and she's broadly criticized for that.
First ladies who choose to follow the active model often engage in equality campaigns, cultural or charity initiatives. During diplomatic visits, they serve as official hosts and representatives of their countries. Whether Marta Nawrocka will become an active voice in Polish social life or will stay behind the scenes, only time, and she herself, will show. This report for TVP World by Anastasia Yanchenko.
Poland's high-stakes presidential race, won by the right-wing Karol Nawrocki, leaves the ruling coalition government on notice and sends a signal beyond the country's borders. Here to break it all down is Adam Trzaskowski, Executive Director at More in Common Poland. Thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you for having me.
So let's start with Prime Minister Donald Tusk's address this evening, announcing a vote of confidence in his government. Is this him trying to assert his influence, his power, in the face of a threat from the right? And to be clear, is he likely to win this vote?
Oh, of course, he's very likely to win this vote. He will win this vote. There's no doubt about that. What he wants to signal is strength. He wants to project strength, that he has the support of the ruling coalition, of the coalition parties. The election of Karol Nawrocki, his win was a major warning sign for the coalition, for the government, which has been criticized for a lack of vision in recent months. So for Donald Tusk, it is a chance for a new opening, basically.
Could this Nawrocki win lead to something like a snap election here in Poland?
I would say it's not very likely. There is no reason for the government to resign. It has a stable majority in the parliament. It's all up to the parties to govern better, in a better way, in a way which is more popular with Polish voters. And in the end, it would be probably something of a political suicide should the government resign at this very moment. The momentum is not on their side. The momentum is with Karol Nawrocki and the Law and Justice Party at the moment. So for the government, it is about projecting strength and waiting and see what's going to happen.
Rafał Trzaskowski tried everything possible to not make this a referendum on the coalition government. It did become that. Given the razor-tight margin, How split and polarised is Polish society? This Polish society that Prime Minister Tusk and now President-elect Nawrocki will preside over, it feels like a cohabitation not just of a president and of a prime minister, but of two completely different worldviews.
Well, that is true, but this is kind of made by design. The second round of a presidential election, it has only two candidates. There is no room for any third option. There is basically no escape from being part of this of polarization, basically. So it's the very nature of the Polish presidential election. But at the same time, we do see that the first round showed that there are many voters who are tired with the so-called duopoly of the two biggest parties, the Civic Coalition and Law and Justice. They were looking for alternatives, both on the right and on the left. Almost 40% of the voters voted for one of the candidates outside of the two main parties, which was also kind of a sign of I would even call it a celebration of democracy in Poland. There were candidates of all colors and shapes and sizes, all political and ideological ideologies. So it really was a kind of a festival of democracy.
Jarosław Kaczynski, speaking of Law and Justice, he's the co-founder of the Law and Justice Party, the leader of that party. He's given an address also just moments ago, and he's calling for Donald Tusk to resign. Can you see that happening? I mean, what happens next from here?
Oh, definitely not. Donald Tusk is not resigning. There is no way for that, and I'm not surprised Jarosław Kaczynski is calling for that, because he's calling for that at every occasion possible. It's a role of the opposition leader to do that, basically. So no surprise is there. But Donald Tusk, first of all, he wants to manifest strength. That he has the backing of his coalition in the parliament, and he will get it. I don't see any possibility of that not happening. It would be, as I said, political suicide especially for the coalition parties who have been struggling to gain support in recent weeks and months. So I think we're going to wait and see, basically. Karol Nawrocki will become president only in 2 months, so there is still room for maneuver with the current president. Maybe the government will try to already put some initiatives, put some new bills on the outgoing president's table. This is partly what Donald Tusk announced as well, that there will be some kind of a new opening and acceleration of the work within the government. So it's basically now wait and see. It's a kind of a stalemate at this very moment. But it's for both parties a moment of trying to basically not only gain momentum, but also to project strength and ahead of the summer holidays as well.
If we look beyond Poland's borders, Karol Nawrocki, he's a Eurosceptic. He's on the campaign trail, ruled out an accession to NATO for Ukraine. He's also imitated Donald Trump's image. He went to meet him at the White House. What message does this result send to the likes of Kyiv, Brussels, Berlin, some of Poland's key partners, and will Washington at the same time be celebrating?
Well, I think it's first of all bad news for Kyiv. Poland has been a very strong supporter of Ukraine, not only in military terms, supporting military aid to Ukraine, but also politically. And this is also part of Law and Justice identity under Lech Kaczynski, the late president, who supported Ukraine's ambitions to join European institutions, Western institutions, very strongly. And Karol Nawrocki broke with that tradition. He will be seeking to be a close partner to the American administration, to Donald Trump. And at the same time, when it comes to Europe, it will be a very hard task for the government to find common ground with Karol Nawrocki on European affairs. Karol Nawrocki has been a strong opponent of the European Green Deal, for example, of European migration policy. Will be very hard to find any compromises there. So the big problem for the Polish government and for Donald Tusk and the foreign policy establishment of the Polish government will be that Warsaw will be speaking with two voices and not one.
And lastly, Poland is largely being regarded as becoming a key leader in Europe. It was on the front page of The Economist just a few weeks ago. What does this election result mean for Poland's place, standing in this region?
We still don't know. Well, first of all, it shows that Poland is a functioning democracy. We had a fair and free election, and this is the most important characteristic of a democracy. It still remains to be seen how cooperative, of how destructive Karol Nawrocki wants to act as president, because the president in Poland has the right to veto bills. He has very little creative function, so to say. So it will be up to him to decide if he wants to be a cooperative president or a destructive one.
Watch this space. Adam Trzaskowski, Executive Director at More in Common Poland. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
And that's all for World News tonight. Do stay with us here on TVP World for more. I'm Aaron Darman. Good night.